Okay, 8th grade. So today we're starting our Home Learning 2.0, which is just our second round of e-learning. Hopefully you've received the packets. If you haven't, please let me know. So I know you've received multiple packets for different subjects, but obviously I'm going to be talking about English specifically. So you should have received 2 different English packets. So one of those packets is a reading packet, and one of them is a writing packet. Today we're going to be in the reading packet. Tomorrow we'll be in the writing packet. So I will put out the calendar. I'll probably make a couple updates to it, so I'm going to go ahead and post a weekly calendar. But the district did provide us with a pacing for how we're going to complete these packets, but I might have a couple changes to that. So today we're going to be doing pages 11 to 14 in the reading packet. So the first thing we're going to be talking about, which I will be back with my board tomorrow. I've been having a lot of issues with recordings and things like that. So this is better than nothing for today. But we will be back with the regular board recordings and all that kind of stuff tomorrow. But we're going to be talking about verb moods to start with, and then we'll move on to something else. But the first thing we're going to talk about is verb moods. So this is a little bit more complicated of a subject, so hopefully we can get out of it what we need to get out of it. So verb moods indicate the writer's view as to whether a statement is a fact, a command, a question, a possibility, or something that's contrary to fact. So some of those things might not make sense. We're going to look at the chart to kind of dig more into those things. So where it says a fact, that's the indicative verb mood. So a fact or opinion would just be saying something like y'all like to say all the time, oh, I'm going to do this, period. It's just what's happening. Or I think that this is the best restaurant, period. There's no other explanation for it. It's just that is the fact I'm presenting or the opinion I'm presenting, period. So the example of this is the election will be on Tuesday. The election will be on Tuesday, period. Again, there's no other meaning to this. It's just saying this is what is happening. It's not that it might happen. It's not that it could happen or should happen. It's that it is happening. It's just either a fact or an opinion. So the second one we're going to look at is imperative. So that's the command that they talked about. So imperative gives a command and omits the subject. What that omit means is that it takes the subject out of the sentence. Now, just a refresher on what subjects are. If we look at this, obviously this one's not going to have a subject because they omit the subject. But if we look at the election will be on Tuesday, election is our subject because what will be on Tuesday? The election. This sentence is talking all about the election, which makes the election our subject. So the imperative verb mood takes away our subject. So it says, remember to vote. Who is the subject in the sentence? The unspoken subject. Whoever the reader's talking to, right? So that it could be you should remember to vote or you need to remember to vote, that sort of thing. But it's just commanding the reader to do something without a subject. So the next one is the question, which is interrogative. So this one is probably the most simple one. It just asked a question. That's it. Have you met all the candidates? Are you going to the store? Have you gone to the store? Are you going to the dance? That sort of thing. It's just asking a question. The interrogative verb mood just asks a question. That's it. Conditional verb mood is where we're expressing a possibility or uncertainty. Often uses could, would, or might. So this is just the opposite of the fact, basically. It's not saying that it's going to happen, it's saying it could happen. So if we look at our example, it says Kim would make the best president. Kim might not end up getting voted to be president, but if she does, then she would make the best one. So that's sort of hitting on that uncertainty aspect, because they're not really sure if she's going to make president, but if she does, she would make the best one. Another example of that conditional would be if this one said the election might be on Tuesday, because maybe you're not sure. So that would be a conditional verb mood. The last one is subjunctive, expresses something contrary to fact, or makes a suggestion using a that clause. So the first one that we're going to look at is expressing something contrary to fact. So it says, I wish Tyler were a candidate. What contrary means is something that's not a fact, basically, something opposite of the fact. So the fact is that Tyler's not a candidate, but they're saying, I wish Tyler were a candidate. So that's something, expressing something contrary to fact, making a suggestion and using a that clause. I recommend that you vote for Kim. The that clause is the word that, and they're just saying, making a suggestion to you that you vote for Kim. So then there's a little bit of a tool that you have to keep in mind when you're using the subjunctive verb mood, is that when you use it with a singular subject, which what singular subject means, we know that subject of the sentence is what the sentence is talking about. So in this case, it would be Tyler. In this case, we know it would be election, that sort of thing. When you're using a singular subject, singular is talking about one thing. So Tyler is singular, election is singular, all that kind of stuff. Use the plural verb form in most cases. So we know that they're singular, talking about one, as we said. Plural is talking about multiple. So even though you're talking about a singular subject, you use a plural verb when you're using a singular subject, when you're using the subjunctive mood. So if the verb is be, use the past plural were when expressing something contrary to fact. So, for example, the past plural, if we looked at our example here, I wish Tyler were a candidate, were is the past plural. And we had a singular subject that used a past plural, were. Another example, I suggest that he join the campaign. Jenna acts as if she were already president. So you don't use was or is. So not Jenna acts as if she is already president, or Jenna acts as if she was already president. We're using were. So when a main clause uses conditional words like would or might, these words are often unnecessary in the subordinate clause and should be avoided. So I would have voted for Maya if she had not asked me. So it's just unnecessary. We're making it a little bit shorter. So I would have voted for Maya if she, we shouldn't say would have asked me. We just say if she had asked me. I know that this is very confusing. It's just a couple extra rules that we have to keep in mind when we're doing all these things. So now we're going to do this guided practice together. You guys will do page 12 and 14 on your own. We have more to go over on page 13. But for now, we're going to do this guided practice on page 11. So it says, rewrite each sentence, changing the mood as indicated in the parentheses. So our hint is you can combine a subordinate clause that is subjunctive with a main clause that is conditional. So if we go up here, so I'm sure you guys are super confused here. I should have mentioned this, but I just did not think to. So when it's talking about subordinate clauses and main clauses, we have already talked about independent and dependent clauses, right? So independent means it can stand on its own, and a dependent clause means that it relies on the sentence, the clauses around it to make sense, right? So we've talked about this previously, We already know that independent clause can stand on its own. Dependent clause relies on the clauses around it to make sense. When it says main clause, it's talking about an independent clause. It's just another word for it. I should have thought to mention that, but I just did not. And subordinate is a dependent clause. It means the same thing. So if we look at this, it says when an independent clause uses conditional words like would or might, these words are often unnecessary in the dependent clause and should be avoided. So our independent clause is, I would have voted for Maya. In the independent clause, they use the words would or might. So in this case, they use would. So we don't need to use that in the dependent clause because it would be really repetitive. So in the dependent clause is if she had asked me. So that instead of saying would have, they said had. I should have explained that earlier. I did not think to. So you can combine a dependent clause that is subjunctive, which subjunctive is expressing something contrary to fact or making a suggestion. So you can combine a subordinate clause that is subjunctive with an independent clause that is conditional. And conditional means that it expresses uncertainty or possibility. So the example they give you is, if I were you, I would register to vote. So I would register to vote is our main clause. Our subordinate clause or dependent clause is if I were you. And you can combine those two things, a subjunctive and a conditional, together. So on our first one, it says, if it is not too late, I will vote. It's subjunctive and conditional. How do we combine those two things? Well, again, it says you can combine a subordinate clause, which is a dependent clause. You can combine a dependent clause that is subjunctive with a main clause or independent clause that is conditional. So it says, if it is not too late, I would vote. Well, if we look at our hint here, it says when the independent clause uses conditional words like would or might, or it could also be something like if or something along those lines. Those words are often unnecessary in the subordinate clause and should be avoided. So let's start with if it is not too late. Well, right here, we know that says Jenna acts as if she were already president. It says we don't use, because we know we're looking at a subjunctive verb mood, we know that we shouldn't use is, which we do see the word is here. So what do we replace is with? Were. So we know already it begins with if it were not too late, and we're combining the two, so we do comma, and it says I will vote. Well, if we're making it that past tense, the past plural, past tense, then we know when it says I will vote, will is talking about like in the future. We need to be talking about in the past. So what is the past tense of will? Would. So it's I would vote. And I know this is super confusing. Hopefully I'm explaining it well. If not, I'm going to be super available during office hours this week as always. So if you need extra help, I will be on there. So the next one says, will you vote for Harry as for president? And that's imperative. What is imperative again? It gives a command omitting the subject. So will you vote for Harry for president? We don't want to ask them a question. We want to tell them to do something. So what are we telling people to do here? The answer is going to be as soon as you say it. What are we telling people to do here? Vote for Harry for president. And we don't say you should vote for Harry for president because we omit that subject. Remember? Omits the subject. Takes it out. Remember to vote. Vote for Harry for president. He commands the stage like a movie star. So that's going to be subjunctive using as if. So subjunctive is expresses something contrary to fact or makes a suggestion. And we need to use the phrase as if. So we're going to start the same way. He commands the stage. And then what's our verb here? Other than commands. In what way does he command the stage? Like a movie star. He commands the stage like a movie star. So instead of, it tells us what to do. Instead of like, we use as if. And would it make sense if we said as if a movie star? No. It would be as if he were a movie star. Because if we go back up here, it tells us about using were. Jenna acts as if she were already president. We see that same example here. Now we need to do the indicative of Harry would be an excellent president. So indicative expresses a fact. So not the election would be on Tuesday, the election will be on Tuesday. So if we go down here, are we saying Harry would be a great president or Harry should be a president? No, we'd say Harry will be an excellent president. So you guys can do you need to do page 12 on your own, but you can do that at the end, or you can pause right now and do it if you want to. But that's going to be some independent practice. We are going to go ahead and move on to page 13 here, which talks about shifts in voice and mood. So this sort of builds off the verb mood stuff we were just talking about. So shifts in voice and mood. Shifting verb voice, active and passive, which we talked about with the last packet, or mood, which is what we just finished talking about, indicative, imperative, interrogative, conditional, and subjunctive within a sentence can make your writing awkward and confuse the reader. So shifting verb voice or mood within a sentence can make your writing awkward and confuse the reader. So avoid changing from active to passive or passive to active. So it gives you a couple examples right here. So the first one would be the wrong way to do it, which is the inconsistent way. It's just saying not the right way. So it says the Carolina Ballet Theater gives you passive voice. It was created, which we talked about previously. If you need to, I believe that was the first video that we went over. So if you need to review that, you can. But passive, it's being given something. It was created in 1972, and its founder designed, which is active voice, it to be a permanent dance company. So they use both passive and active voice in the sentence. Now you have two options when you're fixing this shifting between passive and active voice. You can either switch them both to passive, or you can switch them both to active. So it gives you the example first in passive. The Carolina Ballet Theater was created in 1972, and it was designed by its founder to be a permanent dance company. So they just give that was, which makes it more of a passive voice instead of an active voice. Now here they took off that was to make that created just a active voice. And they also switched around the sentence a little bit. So instead of saying that the ballet theater was created, they said the founder created the Carolina Ballet Theater, because we need to have the subject first, and the subject being the person that created the ballet company. And she designed it to be a permanent dance company. So we switched them both to active voice. Now shifting from one verb mood to another, you don't want to have imperative and then indicative. So here it says go to the website. It's just telling you to do something. That's the imperative. So go to the website and you will read more about the company. And that's the indicative, which if we go back to that page, we know that indicative is saying a fact, so that they will go do something. Imperative gives a command. So those are two separate verb moods. We need to make them the same. In this example, they made them both into that command. So it just says go to the website and read more about the company. Not saying you will read more, just saying you read more. And they also took off that subject you so that it is omitting the subject and just making it command. So it says underline inappropriate shifts in verb mood, voice or mood. Then on a separate sheet of paper, rewrite each sentence to correct inappropriate shifts in verb, voice, or mood. I'm going to try to type them underneath here, but you can write them. You can write them underneath if you can write small enough. If not, then you can write them on a separate sheet of paper. That's fine with me. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the inappropriate shifts in verb, voice, or mood. We'll do that first. So it says when you use active voice, the subject does the action. When you use passive voice, the subject receives the action. That's like what I was talking about that we already talked about in the last packet. You can go back and review that if you need to. So it says the Carolina Ballet Theater employs 10 dancers, and each dancer would be uniquely talented. Well, I think here we see that they are using, we're looking at a difference in verb mood here. So here they're saying that they employ 10 dancers. It's not saying that they might employ 10 dancers or that they could employ 10 dancers. It's saying that they do employ 10 dancers. So it's using that indicative verb mood, which is the stating a fact, that they employ 10 dancers. Well, each dancer would be uniquely talented. Well, if we go back and look at our chart, we know that would be is conditional. So that's going to make it not a consistent verb mood. So we know that would be is what is mixing up the verb mood there. We'll come back and change the sentence to make it more cohesive and not so inconsistent. Watch them perform and you will learn more about the ballet. Well, let's look at our example up here. Go to the website and you will read more about the company. Watch them perform. That is what type of verb mood? Imperative. It's commanding you to do something. So we know that the will learn needs to be taken out of here and replaced with something else because it needs to be changed to be more of the imperative verb mood instead of the indicative verb mood. So students in the community are reached out to by the dance company, so ballet influences their lives in a positive way. So ballet influences their lives in a positive way is just stating facts, that sort of thing. If we look up here, students in the community are reached. It doesn't say their ballet influences or their lives are influenced in a positive way. Sorry, I'm jumbling around here. It doesn't say their lives are influenced in a positive way, but up here it says they are reached. So we need to change "are reached" to look more like our clause down here. So the dance company is supported by generous donors, and it has performed in many other countries. So we see that we have this supported, which is more of that. We have is supported, which is more of that passive voice. And then the has performed, which is more of that active voice. And so we know that the is supported, we need to change that to be more of the active voice, which 3 is also dealing with that active and passive voice, and the first 2 are dealing with those verb moods. So in number 3 and 4, again, 3 we're dealing with the are reached, which if we look up here gives us more of that passive voice. So what we're going to do is go ahead and change it to active, but really you could vary in different ways and do it, change it both of them to passive or both of them to active. You change these verb moods to a specific type of verb mood, but I'll show you how I'm going to do it here. So the Carolina Ballet Theater employs 10 dancers. Well, there's not a problem with that because we know that The problem is in the second part of the sentence. I'm just going to fix the second part because we already know that the first part's fine. So I'm just going to put a ... You can do that too. So it says, and each dancer would be uniquely talented. So we need to change this so that it's not talking in the past tense. This one says that it employs 10 dancers. They currently employ 10 dancers. In those 10 dancers, so and each dancer is uniquely talented. Now let me explain this a little bit more. So the Carolina Ballet Theater, it doesn't say they will employ 10 dancers or that they should employ 10 dancers and each of them would be uniquely talented. It says they currently employ 10 dancers. That's just a fact. That's just the indicative that they do employ 10 dancers. And each dancer would be, well, they're not saying that they will employ 10 dancers or that they did employ 10 dancers. It says they currently do. So each of those dancers is uniquely talented because they currently are talented. They currently are employed by the Carolina Ballet Theater. So same thing with the last one. Watch them perform. We're not going to rewrite it, sorry, because that part's fine. Watch them perform, that's that imperative, which if we look at here, is commanding the reader to do something. So they're commanding you to watch them perform. We need to omit the subject, what the subject is you, so we know we don't put you here. And we take out that will, because we're just telling them to do something. We wouldn't say, will learn more about the ballet. We say, learn more about ballet. So these could be two separate statements. You could say, watch them perform, period. Learn more about ballet, period. It's just saying that by doing that, you're going to learn more about ballet. Students in the community are reached out to by the dance company, so ballet influences their lives in a positive way. We just have to change the beginning in this one. So we need to make this more of an active voice because right now it's a passive voice. So students in the community are reached out to by the dance company. Who's the one actually doing the action? If we are here, it seems like the subject is students in the community, but the dance company is the ones reaching out, right? But it seems like maybe it's not that way because it's passive. So if we make it active, we need to put the dance company at the beginning because they're the ones that are doing something. Now, what are they doing? Reaching out. So we would say the dance company reaches out to, who are they reaching out to? Students in the community. And that's all we have to do there. ... because the end's the same. So we changed it to where it's active, so we have to put the dance company at the beginning because that's who we're talking about here. The dance company does what? They reach out to students in the community. So ballet influences their lives in a positive way. Because ballet influences is active voice. Students in the community are reached out to is passive voice. So when we say the dance company reaches out and ballet influences, that changes both of those to active voice. The last one is the dance company is supported by generous donors. And it has performed in many other countries. So, the dance company is supported is passive voice because the generous donors are the ones supporting the dance company. So this is working really super similarly to the last one. So we would say generous donors do what? Support the ballet company and it has performed in many other countries. It performed donors support. Sorry, I put a D there. So that changes both of those to active voice. You could have changed both of them to passive voice on either 3 or 4. That's just up to you. So now you guys are going to do page 14 on your own. So you need to, again, do pages 13 and 14 by yourself. If you need extra help with this, which I would not blame you at all, this is really complicated material, please, 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 please reach out to me. So I'm here to help you guys whenever you need it. So please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I miss seeing you guys in class, so I'm not going to be upset about that at all. So hopefully I will talk to some of you guys in office hours today.